Hazel Ford tightened the strap of her well-worn handbag, her fingers trembling slightly as she stood before the gleaming glass doors of Luxe Couture. For months, she had saved every spare penny from her long days stitching and mending at the tiny tailoring shop tucked between a bakery and a dry cleaner's. Now, holding the appointment confirmation in her hand, Hazel took a deep breath and stepped inside. The boutique swirled around her like a world apart. Sparkling chandeliers cast glittering light over glossy marble floors polished to a mirror shine. The soft scent of expensive perfumes filled the air, and a gentle melody played from hidden speakers, weaving through the elegant murmurs of impeccably dressed patrons browsing the racks of delicate silks and shimmering sequins. Hazel's faded but neat dress felt markedly out of place, as did the humble creak of her shoes on the pristine floor. She shifted nervously, clutching her purse like a lifeline. Approaching the reception desk, she cleared her throat and said quietly, "Hello, I'm here to ask about a special dress need for my daughter's school recital. Something simple, not too fancy, a custom order, I guess." The woman behind the desk glanced up, her perfectly polished nails tapping impatiently. "This isn't a place for your kind of request," she said with a sharp, mocking tone. She chuckled exaggeratedly, loud enough for some nearby customers to glance toward Hazel. "We cater to clients wanting the finest fabrics and designs, not," she waved vaguely toward Hazel, lips curling into a sneer. Before Hazel could respond, the boutique manager appeared at her side. "We don't serve basic requests from people who can barely afford our displays," he snapped, voice cold and public. "Please leave." Hazel's cheeks burned as the eyes of stunned shoppers turned toward her, the luxury around her suddenly feeling like a cage. She swallowed hard, tears threatening, and stepped quietly back toward the door. Hazel stepped out into the crisp afternoon air, the boutique's glass doors closing behind her with an unceremonious click that echoed in her chest. The hushed tones and sharp glances of those inside still clung to her skin like a cold mist. A few nearby pedestrians cast quick, curious looks, some with sympathy, others tinged with judgment. She walked slowly along the polished sidewalk, her heart heavy, until she spotted a quiet wooden bench beneath a sprawling oak tree just down the street. Each step felt leaden, her hands trembling as she lowered herself onto the worn seat, clutching her handbag tightly against her chest like a shield. The wooden bench creaked softly as she settled, the world around her blurring for a moment into muted colors and distant noises. Hazel's breath came in shallow gasps as she fought to hold back the sting behind her eyes. The sunlight filtered through the leaves, dappling her faded dress with shifting patterns, but it did nothing to chase away the weight settling deep inside her. Across the street, a young woman in a simple cotton blouse paused, her lips pressed together in quiet sympathy before she turned away, leaving Hazel alone with her swirling thoughts. Hazel's mind drifted back to the months leading up to this day, the countless late nights spent hunched over a sewing machine in her tiny workshop, fingers aching from threading needles and tugging stubborn seams. She remembered the ache in her back, sharp and relentless, kicked aside because the bills wouldn't wait. The quiet dinners she skipped or simplified so her daughter wouldn't realize the fridge was sparse. Every penny stowed, every thrift store find carefully mended, all to save up enough for this moment, a single, special dress for her daughter's recital. She recalled the morning's measuring cloth with worn tape, her fingers gently smoothing folds of fabric, imagining the soft skirt swaying as her daughter twirled on stage. The small victories, when a tricky seam held perfectly, when the hem was flawless, had been the highlights of her days. She thought of evenings quiet except for her daughter's laughter as she imagined all the other girls wearing expensive gowns, and how Hazel hoped her simple garment would make her feel just as special. The dream had lived quietly in her heart for years. Every time she passed Luxe Couture on her route home, its grand windows filled with glittering gowns and silk scarves had whispered promises she scarcely dared to believe. Hazel had told herself, one day, I'll bring her here, and we'll make a dress that shines, just for her. Even her doctor had advised a gentle celebration after the tough year they'd endured, her health strained, but her spirit needing a lift. The dress was supposed to be part of that hope, a quiet reclaiming of joy for her daughter and herself. Now, sitting on the bench, Hazel felt every thread of that dream unravel, the sting of humiliation burning fresh and sharp. Her cheeks ached, not just from the tears she held back, but from the raw ache of injustice that welled inside her, a simple woman, finally reaching out for a moment of grace, only to be told she didn't belong. But alongside the hurt, a deep sadness bloomed, not just for herself, but for every modest customer pushed aside, every hopeful heart dismissed for the shimmer of glittering labels and polished smiles. The laughter from inside the boutique replayed in her ears, cruel and dismissive, the words cutting sharper than any insult she had heard since childhood. Hazel's chest felt tight, her throat dry, but her hands didn't let go of the bag, her small talisman of resilience. Time passed slowly as she sat there, the busy world carrying on around her, children rushing by with school bags, a dog barking in the distance, the occasional screech of a bus starting and stopping. A gust of wind rustled the scattered leaves at her feet, lifting a few into the air where they danced briefly before settling again. Hazel closed her eyes, breathing deeply, forcing herself to anchor in this moment of pain rather than let it sweep her away. She thought of her own mother and grandmother, women who had long stitched together garments and lives with quiet endurance. The seamstress's craft ran deep in her family, skill and patience without fanfare or applause. And though the boutique had tried to make her feel smaller than she was, Hazel knew her worth wasn't tied to velvet cushions or crystal chandeliers. She whispered to herself softly, as if reaffirming a forgotten truth. I'm more than this moment. The sting lingered, but so did a flicker of something else, a fragile ember of determination. After several minutes, Hazel rose slowly, her body protesting the movement but her spirit gathering strength. She tucked stray strands of her mousy brown hair behind her ears and checked her reflection in the window of a nearby store. The woman looking back wore no glitter, no fancy labels, but in her eyes burned quiet dignity. Her fingers brushed the worn leather of her handbag, and she remembered the reason behind everything, the recital, the dream of a simple dress to make her daughter's face light up. Hazel adjusted the strap over her shoulder and took a tentative step forward. As she walked away from the bench and further from Luxe Couture's grand facade, Hazel felt the weight of the afternoon settle into her bones. She hadn't spoken up, not yet, hadn't dared to challenge the sharp words and cold dismissal. But inside, a seed had been planted. The hurt had cracked open a space where something firmer could grow. Her pace quickened, not out of fear, but resolve. The pain of rejection was raw, but it would not be the last word. There was something to be done, not just for herself, but for anyone made to feel less because of where they came from or what they wore. Clutching her handbag, Hazel folded the afternoon's humiliation into a small, quiet oath. She would not disappear beneath the whispers and laughter. If the world chose to laugh, she would find a way to be heard. The sun dipped lower, casting a soft golden light as Hazel set her shoulders and walked toward the place she called home, ready to face what came next. After sitting on the bench and gathering her scattered thoughts, Hazel felt a quiet resolve settle inside her. The sting of rejection, while sharp, was not enough to silence the voice rising within her. She had spent too long stitching pieces together for others to let her own story unravel in silence. Steeling herself, she unfolded her phone from the folds of her dress and tapped the camera app open. The afternoon sun in the park nearby gave her face a soft glow as Hazel took a deep breath and began speaking, her voice steady despite the tremor beneath. Hello, I'm Hazel Ford. I want to share what happened to me today at Luxe Couture. She shifted the phone to show the boutique's entrance from the street, the very spot where she had been laughed at and dismissed earlier. I went there hoping to get a simple, custom-made dress for my daughter's school recital, something modest and sweet. But the service staff treated me like I was invisible, and worse, mocked me openly. Hazel's eyes flicked down briefly to steady herself, then she pressed play on the video she had recorded before entering. The moment she asked politely about ordering the dress, the sales assistant sneering and laughing in a loud, exaggerated way. The camera wobbled slightly in Hazel's hand as she caught the manager's cold dismissal and sharp words telling her to leave. "I wouldn't share this if it didn't matter," Hazel said softly, lowering the camera back onto herself. "But too many simple customers like me get this treatment, treated like we don't belong just because we don't dress or speak like their typical client. We deserve respect. We deserve kindness." She paused, looking directly into the lens. "This isn't just about one dress. It's about dignity. So please, if you believe no one should be made to feel less, please share this. Let's stand against snobbery and the cruelty hidden behind luxury." Hazel gave a gentle, hopeful smile and ended the recording. After a moment's hesitation, she tapped the upload button. The video began to circulate almost instantly. Within minutes, comments started to flood in, kind words, shared experiences of being treated poorly in elegant places, and encouragement pouring in from strangers moved by her calm, heartfelt message. Encouraged, Hazel then composed a clear, concise post to accompany the video. She wrote about the quiet strength of everyday people who navigate worlds not built for them, about how simple acts of kindness matter. She called on viewers to spread the message widely, urging that respect in service is a right, not a privilege. Hours later, Hazel watched as the video's views climbed steadily into the thousands. A consumer rights advocate shared her story, amplifying its reach. Supporters praised Hazel's courage in speaking up calmly but firmly for others like her, who so often suffer in silence. Meanwhile, the buzz caught the attention of city officials. The Health and Commerce Department scheduled an immediate inspection of Luxe Couture, responding to concerns raised by public comments and the evidence of dismissive treatment toward customers. It seemed Hazel's quiet stand had lit a spark far beyond what she had imagined. The inspectors arrived unannounced the next day. They found multiple issues that couldn't be ignored. Emergency exits blocked by inventory crates violated fire safety regulations. Labels on several fabrics failed to disclose allergen information, posing potential hazards for customers with sensitivities. Staff were discovered operating without required customer service certifications, undermining the boutique's claims of professionalism. Public notices warned the establishment would face fines and possible suspension of their license pending corrective actions. Luxe Couture's reputation suffered immediate damage as news outlets quietly reported on the inspection results, linking them to Hazel's video and the groundswell of community outrage. In a move to contain the fallout, Luxe Couture's management suspended the sales assistant who had ridiculed Hazel pending further review. The decision was accompanied by a terse statement emphasizing the boutique's newly renewed commitment to customer respect, though many remained skeptical. For Hazel, the flood of messages became overwhelming and uplifting all at once. Strangers across the country shared their own stories of exclusion and ridicule in upscale businesses, thanking her for giving voice to their experiences. Neighbors and longtime customers stopped by her shop with encouraging words, offering small gifts or simply a warm handshake. The tiny tailoring shop buzzed with a new energy. Hazel found herself talking more openly about dignity in service and the quiet power of standing up, no matter one's background or attire. It was becoming clear that what she had endured and shared resonated far beyond a single dress request. Her courage ignited a broader conversation about inclusion and respect in the fashion world. Online forums filled with discussions about how many simple customers had endured cold shoulders and dismissive attitudes in places where luxury is measured by price tags and polished smiles. Hazel's story gave shape to a collective call for change. And while the challenges of daily life remained, long hours at the sewing machine, the careful budgeting, the small victories and setbacks, Hazel felt the shift inside her. She had found a voice for herself and others, a quiet strength that could not be diminished by scorn or dismissal. At night, when the workshop was quiet except for the hum of the sewing machine and the gentle breath of her daughter sleeping nearby, Hazel allowed herself a small smile. The boutique that had tried to erase her presence became a catalyst for something new, a moment of transformation for herself and many others. Her simple dream of a modest dress had sparked a much larger movement. It was the unexpected power of quiet courage, woven into the fabric of everyday resilience. And Hazel Ford, the modest seamstress who dared to step into a world that wasn't made for her, could finally begin to feel that spark reach beyond the shadows. The story of Hazel Ford's experience at Luxe Couture spread far beyond her small town, captured and carried by social media in a way Hazel had never imagined. Her video, with its quiet dignity and undeniable evidence, struck a chord with thousands, then tens of thousands, who shared similar stories of being dismissed or shamed in upscale businesses. The hashtag #SimpleNotInvisible flickered across screens worldwide, a rallying cry that resonated deeply as it encouraged people to speak out against elitism disguised behind luxury's polished facade. A popular consumer advocacy influencer, Marcus Lane, who had millions of followers, picked up Hazel's video and narrated the story in his own compelling way, emphasizing how everyday people seeking something as simple as respect shouldn't be met with mockery. His followers amplified the message, sending shockwaves through the retail and fashion communities. Platforms buzzed with hashtags and comments supporting Hazel, while highlighting the broader problem of snobbery in luxury spaces. Mainstream news outlets caught on as well, running stories headlined with phrases like "Seamstress's simple dress request meets scorn" and "Luxury boutiques elitism exposed." Comment threads filled with outrage at how Luxe Couture had treated Hazel, not just dismissively but with an openly hostile tone that many found appalling. A flood of voices emerged, sharing personal encounters of exclusion, often noting how such treatment was far from uncommon among expensive boutiques and elite brands. Pressure mounted quickly on Luxe Couture's management. The boutique issued a carefully worded statement promising to review customer service policies and commit to inclusivity, but the public saw through this as little more than damage control. Meanwhile, city officials had already acted, fueled partly by the public outcry and partly by anonymous complaints from former employees who spoke quietly about unsafe working conditions and poor staff training. The City Health and Commerce Department carried out thorough inspections of Luxe Couture. Inspectors found several critical issues: emergency exits blocked by stock and heavy display racks, a clear violation of fire safety regulations, fabrics mislabeled with inaccurate or missing allergen information, endangering sensitive customers, and most strikingly, evidence that multiple staff members lacked mandatory customer service certification, meaning they were not properly trained for the responsibilities they carried within the highly demanding luxury retail environment. Within days of the public release of the inspection report, Luxe Couture faced stiff fines and a temporary suspension of its license to operate. News outlets reported on the findings with increasing intensity, noting how the investigation began partly due to Hazel's viral video and the cascade of public pressure it created. The once elegant boutique's polished image cratered in the face of regulatory scrutiny and mounting public distrust. The sales assistant who had openly mocked Hazel was suspended pending further investigation. Rumors circulated within industry circles that the boutique might use this incident as a prompt to overhaul its hiring and training practices, though critics questioned whether these promises would result in meaningful change or simply be another public relations gesture. For Hazel, the rapid response from authorities and the supportive wave from the public did something profound. It transformed her from the quiet seamstress who had suffered in silence into a symbol of dignity and resilience. Messages arrived daily from people she'd never met, thanking her for her courage and for giving voice to struggles that many had felt but feared to express. Women who made a modest living, children from working-class neighborhoods, and others who once shrank in the glow of luxury spaces now stepped forward with their stories. Several contacted Hazel directly, sharing their own encounters with snobbery and exclusion, drawing strength from the example she had set. Her tiny tailoring shop, once just a place of work for her and a welcome refuge for simple clients, now became a hub for conversations about kindness, respect, and fairness. Hazel took part in informal gatherings and online forums, encouraging others to speak up and reminding them that their worth was not measured by their attire or the price of the places they entered. And as hours filled days, Hazel noticed a subtle but meaningful shift not just in her community but among businesses themselves. Other boutiques and service providers began reviewing their own customer policies and training, spurred in part by the public reaction to luxe couture's failures. Some announced new inclusivity initiatives, hoping to regain trust from a broader clientele. Despite the growing recognition and the wave of support, Hazel remained grounded in her work. What she had sparked didn't create overnight transformation, but it sparked a wider dialogue, a call for dignity and respect woven into everyday interactions. Still, the magnitude of the change was visible. Luxe Couture's door, once a symbol of exclusion, now wore a taped notice declaring temporary closure for safety renovations and mandatory staff retraining. The elaborate sign hanging outside announced, "We are committed to change and excellence in service." Though many doubted the sincerity of words written in glossy print, it was, at least, a sign that some part of Hazel's stand had made ripples impossible to ignore. Each evening, when the shop shuttered and the city quieted, Hazel sometimes paused outside the boutique. She saw the new notices with fresh eyes, not as a personal victory alone, but as the start of something broader. The boutique was no longer untouchable, no longer a place where simple requests were met with derision. That chapter was closing. In the weeks after, Hazel found herself the recipient of invitations, from consumer rights groups, from local community leaders, even a small publishing house interested in sharing her story as part of a larger book about everyday courage. She received thoughtful letters and small tokens of appreciation that she accepted with quiet grace. Through it all, Hazel held on to the simple truths that had guided her from the start. Dignity is not bought or sold, it is lived and defended. She had entered Luxe Couture hoping for a modest gift for her daughter and left with something far more powerful, a voice that refused to be silenced. Her action, humble yet unwavering, touched many and carved a place where kindness, respect, and fairness could begin to take root in a world too often glittering on the outside and cold within. The story of a simple seamstress who dared to ask for a simple dress transformed into a far-reaching movement, reminding everyone that no matter where you come from or what you wear, the right to be treated with respect belongs to us all. Weeks passed since Hazel Ford's quiet stand against Luxe Couture had become a viral phenomenon and ignited a citywide conversation. Yet, life in her modest tailoring shop settled back into a familiar rhythm, thimble clicks, fabric rustling, and the warm hum of the sewing machine filling the small room. But Hazel herself had changed profoundly, though outwardly, she remained as she always was, wearing simple, well-loved clothes, her brown hair usually pulled back in a practical bun, and her hands still rough with years of stitching. One crisp morning, as she folded a freshly pressed dress for a local theater company, a letter arrived, its envelope bearing the official stamp of the city's Consumer Protection Office. Hazel's name was scripted neatly across the front. With a flicker of nervous anticipation, she opened it carefully. Inside, a heartfelt letter thanked her for courageously speaking out, recognizing how her actions had propelled meaningful scrutiny and reform not just at Luxe Couture, but across the retail industry citywide. As a result of your advocacy, we have begun implementing policies to ensure equitable treatment of all customers, the letter read. Your voice has reminded us that dignity belongs to everyone, regardless of circumstance. We deeply appreciate your contribution to fostering respect and fairness in the marketplace. Hazel felt a quiet glow of validation that warmed her chest, not from pride, but from knowing her stand had truly mattered. She folded the letter gently and placed it on her work table beside her sewing scissors. Later that week, as the golden afternoon light filtered through the lace curtains, Hazel's phone buzzed with a message from an unexpected sender, Luxe Couture. The boutique, having undergone a staff shakeup and safety renovations prompted by the fallout from the scandal, had extended a formal apology. The message expressed regret for the treatment she endured and offered a goodwill gesture, a voucher for future use. Hazel read the message slowly, weighing her feelings. She recognized the significance of the apology but chose to reply with grace yet distance. "Thank you for your message. I appreciate your acknowledgement and hope this moment marks a true change. I am focused now on my own work and community." Her response was calm, balanced, no bitterness, no lingering resentment, just the steady resolve born of standing her ground. On her way home that evening, Hazel passed Luxe Couture once again. The boutique's windows were draped with news signage announcing enhanced customer service standards and committed to inclusivity and safety. The golden letters sparkled under the street lamps, a quiet testament to the ripple effect her voice had created. A small crowd had gathered near the storefront, curious customers, local journalists, and a few familiar faces from the community, all witnessing the tangible change unfolding. Hazel paused briefly, feeling neither triumph nor bitterness, but a soft satisfaction that quiet courage could influence even the most polished facades. Returning to her cozy shop, she found her daughter waiting eagerly by the sewing table, cradling a simple dress Hazel had sewn, a modest garment of soft cotton, featuring a gentle floral pattern and delicate hand-stitched details. The girl's eyes lit up as she slipped into the dress, twirling softly and laughing with innocent joy. Hazel watched her daughter with a gentle smile, the happiness radiating from the child filling the room like sunshine. It wasn't a dress of silk and sequins, nor did it shimmer under chandeliers, but it was sewn from love, perseverance, and the strength of a mother's hands. As the afternoon waned, Hazel sat back down at her machine, the familiar rhythm soothing, the steady sound a punctuation to the whirlwind of recent months. She felt a deep sense of calm and quiet pride, knowing the story woven through these weeks was not just one of confrontation or change, but of dignity reclaimed. She didn't need the gloss of luxury to feel worthy or strong. That power had always lived within her, simple, steadfast, and true.